The Emperor was just Eren Yeager with his drip going about stamping everything down. I'm gonna rule the world. There can't be no xenophobia if there's only one race. Okay, so where did we have the rig? Let's try this for a moment. So this will never work. Like, wow. Animation really sucks. Oh, okay, let me switch up to something different. What is up folks, Jack here with another video. So you just caught me doing a bit of animations there. I'm trying to learn how to rig properly in Cinema 4D. I may switch to Blender for some future videos because it's a free one. Perhaps do a bit of follow along streams, maybe. That could be a fun thing. But we're not here to talk about rigging nor Space Marines completely. No. You've seen in the titles. Today we're checking a wonderful story. That of the last church on Terra. Yes. I know. The fun thing is that when you partake in Warhammer 40k, you are well aware of the irony of what is happening. From the Emperor always exclaiming that he does not want to be worshipped as a god, while it is that an entire operation or a full society worships him nonetheless, creates a cult about him, the cult of the Emperor, the ecclesiarchy is following along, and then you also have the Bloody Inquisition. I mean, it's so ironic. But as somebody who has more or less like kind of gotten to learn Warhammer, but nevertheless I think that 40k shines a lot when you get down to the human level, which is why today's video is going to be a very fun one. And if I may, I will set up a little bit of a premise here, because I do know that many of you may be already very well versed within the lore of 40k. But some are also here watching the video who are just as noobish as I am. And I know personally, to some that I've talked to, that you've gotten kind of into Warhammer through watching my videos, so I am super happy that I could do that. So that's super cool. So the premise essentially is this. Since the Warhammer universe does operate on both what we consider to be physics or science as a whole, but also a bit of, as I've mentioned, the religious aspect, worship and so on, you have aspects of both religion and science. And in the beginning we could say that we also have the Big Bang. So everything starting from 14 billion years ago, with a whole bunch of stuff happening. From the creation of some old society, like all the entities that you know are thriving within the realm of what we call the immaterium, and chaos and such already erupting some many years before mankind. And then you come into some billion years ago, when we have the different explosions, things forming together, creating our Earth. You have the Cambrian explosion on our Earth, creating life here, offspring of which comes to some 2000 years ago, when some guy is born in the Middle East, and through him comes a religion where for some reason people around the world decided that, hey, we don't even know his birthday, but let's make his birthday the year 0. I don't know how that kind of hangs together, but nevertheless, they did that. So to cut it short, the Warhammer universe essentially has experienced everything that we also have had. So in other words, they may also have gotten through COVID. That's definitely a deal made by Nurgle. I swear. Grandpapa Nurgle. That guy. Some 20,000 years in the future, then you have humanity more or less like exploring the stars. We are thriving, we are creating new societies, finding new abodes on foreign planets, and we're establishing and evolving things so quickly that it's almost considered as magic, especially through what is called the STC, the Standard Template Construct. Whoever decided to name that, it's kind of weird, but at least to me, standard templates, couldn't they find something more fancy? But the STC allow people to more or less say sticks and stones and motorcycles. Sticks and stone, and you have freaking Falcon 9. I don't know. That's like, I was thinking for something better to say, but ideas didn't really pop into my head. But these templates allow us to create more or less anything that we desired, until we employ them on the creation of what was called the Men of Iron, some sentient machines that allow us to perform a lot of our tasks. But unfortunately, in our own hubris, they ended up, through these very sentients that they developed, turning against us, because after all, it is sci-fi, so we kind of had to crash things down and burn a bit of humanity to make it work. You know, that's always part of the plot. So this kind of turnaround ended up casting humanity is what is called the Dark Age of Technology, separating the different colonies that Earth had now created from each other, and everything was kind of crumbling down. Back here on Earth, on Terra, things were more or less shit, and people were struggling to get by. A bunch of regents started gathering people together, creating their own community in some dictatorships, and yeah, everything was kind of grim dark, kind of like a Mad Max land, but times 100, or even more. 40,000. But then came along the Emperor of Mankind. Nobody knows what his true origin is. It is said that he has been along mankind forever, and yeah, kind of like a future Jesus, but one who comes with the power of science. Yes, the Emperor showed up in some mountains, I believe was the actual first time that it spotted him, and he like showcased a bit of his skills in physics and was like, look at this. Everybody were like, you're cool, bro, and everybody more or less followed him. Unless, of course, they did not want to die, because the Emperor was very authoritarian in his rule. Him along with his Thunder Warriors. Sounds like a group of He-Man. But him and his Thunder Warriors kind of cut a swath to everybody who were resisting him. And no one was strong enough to stand against him. And the Emperor ended up uniting humanity, but under a few rules, among one of which is the main plot of this very story, that of religions not being permitted. It's a no-no, because it is fair to say that throughout history religions have been a huge, and I do mean huge, problem in creating both wars, conflicts and misunderstandings around the world. While the faith themselves do not promote any of that, well, if you actually end up reading the scripture, there's no such talk, but people have always been utilizing that as a justification for creating evil. Thus, through the observation of the past, one can always make a correlation and say that it does not end up in anything good if you have these beliefs. So, this is more or less what we are dealing with in this story. And as you have seen in the title, I did write Christian is reacting to the last church, and that is not just some sort of clickbait, but you know, clickbait is always kind of fun. But no, as a soon-to-be physics bachelor, I did also spend some time trying to learn what Holy Scripture actually holds within it, because I have an insatiable thirst for knowledge. As somebody who has been agnostic for most of my life, I know for certain that you cannot just go to a bloody church and get information on that. People are spending thousands of dollars to actually be educated within what the religions are talking about. But, you know, even in, I can only truly speak for the Christian Bible, it is written that the word should be free, so what the hell. Anyways, I ended up studying it, reading the Bible in 3 different languages, the ones that I speak, and yeah, I think that through that and through understanding what is actually written in it, and seeing the logic, yes, I know, it's kind of weird for some to hear that, that is in the Bible, that I can consider myself to be a Christian. So, with that said though, we may be able to get into a fun little conversation here regarding what is kind of conflicting thoughts that both Uriah, who I think is the main character, that's his name? Yes. And his visitor is going to get. Oh, and by the way, this is going to be a long one, so get yourself a drink. Most likely something by Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer over here. Yeah, I mean, summer's coming, so you got to make those gains. And I also got myself some egg toast, so yeah, I'll be eating. Try not to crunch to the mic. Oh yeah, type of Portuguese, poor guy. His work was stolen too soon. Way too soon. Alright. Let me pause this for a moment and see... Yep, everything's been going fine. I was kind of trying to test the mic here for a moment. Wow, wow, wow. It's thunder. I can't remember the last time that I ever held a lamp. This must have been decades. I was like, what, 11? I was visiting my grandparents' village. Now they all have electricity and solar panels and everything. It's nice over there. A visitor.
It is a cold night. I'm an old man. Please.
Euphoria.
Welcome to the Church of the Fulgur Lapis. Do you wish to join us tonight?
Fulgur Lapis.
I don't recognize you.
No, I don't expect you would. Nor would I expect us to be anyone besides you and I.
Well, this is a surprise. My midnight sermons are considered quite popular in these parts.
Oh well.
You're sure?
Quite.
What a shame. I had not thought I'd aged so poorly as to scare so many away.
It is rare to find a man like you with a sense of humor. I have found that most of your kind are dour, leaden-hearted men.
Men like you.
Priests.
Then I fear you have only met the wrong kind. Besides, given the times we live in, any servants of the divine would find it extremely difficult to be of good cheer.
Very true.
Oh, so you are approaching me. Ichirio Keika. Okay, I gotta stop with the anime stuff. Sorry.
I am Uriah Olothair, last priest of the Church of the Fulgur Lapis. Might I have your name?
My name is unimportant. However, you may call me Apocalypse.
An unusual name for one who professes a dislike of priests.
Indeed, because so the Bible is constructed in 66 books, among which the final one, which is more or less a culmination of the entire thing, is the book of Revelation, or written by Apostle John. It is usually called the Revelation of John. But in some translation, like the French one, it is called Apocalypse, the book of Apocalypse, because it's supposed to talk about the end of the world, the end of a world, to say it like that. But yeah, kind of funny for somebody who wants to talk to a priest, perhaps seek some revelation or whatever it is, to be called that. Perhaps his first name is John.
You are aware of the significance of such a word?
I am. It is suiting for tonight, however.
And why exactly would that be? What revelations do you search for in my humble church?
I seek no revelation. I simply wish to talk to you. I wish to learn what keeps you here when the world is abandoning your beliefs in gods and divinity. I wish to understand why you have yet to turn to the faith of science and reason.
Okay, so two things. First and foremost, there's a huge thing that tends to happen when you talk about space marines, and that's the fact that they are not well learned. which, of course, many are a good amount of Space Marines, from either the ones who are marvelous tacticians, because they have to be. That's more or less a major requirement when you are cast into the Astartes program. But some of them also, of course, depending on who the then Dean Father or Primarch used to be, were more or less like brutes, like Brutus, a full generation of them. But with that said, though, they are very well learned. Now, if Apocalypses were to be an Astartes, that would be fun. And the second point would be that there is this weird dispute of whether or not there is a conflict between religion and science. There shouldn't be. Hopefully, through this video, we might explore some of these concepts.
The great fresco of Isandula, a divine work. Wouldn't you agree?
It is quite magnificent, but divine? I don't think so.
Then you have not looked closely enough. Open your heart to its beauty, and you will feel the Spirit of God move within you.
And the whole world came running when the fresco was revealed, and the sight of it was enough to reduce all who saw it to stunned silence.
Ah, so you have read your Vestari.
So I have.
You are a student of art?
I have studied much. Art is indeed one of my interests.
Then you cannot argue that this work was not inspired by a higher power.
Of course I can. I do not seek to diminish the artist's sublime work through allocating praise upon a greater being. Her artistry does not prove the existence of anything. No god has ever created art.
In an earlier age, some might have considered such a sentiment blasphemy.
I have only ever seen mortal men accuse anyone of blasphemy, Uriah. I have only ever seen mortal men act upon it. Were reactions to the accusations any less violent, I would label it a victimless crime.
Nice.
Touché.
That is so true. Am I being too low here? Let me see. We are capable of an unfathomable amount of good and bad. Creativity that we have is there because we all have skills that we have developed over centuries, over millennia. Saying that being able to create art is not supposed to depict anything of the divine. This is more or less like turning back into the mentality of before the Reformation of the 1600s by Martin Luther. Like, why was it that the Catholic Church were so secular in the thing that they were dealing with? A lot of what they had was hiding the actual word of God. It was not accessible to the masses. Plus, the wonderful and beautiful churches, surely they were beautiful. You have something nowadays like the Sagrada Familia from Antoni Gaudi, a marvel of mathematics. But of course, he was also a strong believer and wanted to create a church that was symbolizing how strong his faith was. Yet, Helion, as we call them in German. So like that, this symbolic stuff are not a proof of anything. But let's keep on going.
But I have yet to see any scientist discover the root of inspiration.
The human mind is a wondrous thing. Do not be so quick to underestimate it. Tell me, Uriah, have you ever seen the great cliff sculptures of the Mariana Canyon?
No, though I have heard they are incredibly beautiful.
They are indeed 1,000-meter-high representations of their kings carved in stone that no weapon or drill can cut. They are at least as incredible as this fresco, worked into a cliff that had not seen sunlight in 10,000 years, yet carved by a godless people in a forgotten age. True art requires no divine rationale. It is just art.
You have your opinion, I have mine.
Isandula was a genius and a magnificent artist. That much is beyond question. But she still had to make a living, and even magnificent artists must take commissions where they are to be found.
Isandula, hey, have you heard of Rule 34?
I'm sure this work paid well, for the churches of her time were obscenely wealthy. Do you believe that she would be incapable of such a wondrous feat if she had been
definitely had a
employed by a
Patreon.
secular government?
She very well may have, but unfortunately we shall never know.
No, we won't. We are fickle creatures, Uriah. All too often I am tempted to believe that the invocation of the divine is a ploy by the jealous to dismiss one's accomplishments.
Jealousy?
Absolutely. To see another succeed where you may have failed is a sobering thing. Some would rather choose to remain ignorant of their limitations.
That is a very cynical view of humanity.
Forgive me, but I have seen too much darkness to be so innocent as to always assume good intentions. Do not mistake my intentions, however. Only in understanding our weakness may we find strength.
That is actually one of the biggest messages of the Bible, that people need to know of the limitations. They are bordering in some things that are, yeah, kind of intertwined. I like that. I especially love that he's challenging the priestess thoughts.
Well, this has been an interesting discussion, but you must excuse me, friend Apocalypsis. I have to prepare for my congregation.
No one is coming. It is just you and I.
Why are you really here?
This is the last church on Terra. History will soon be done with places like this, and I want a memory of it before it is gone.
If this is so, then come, friend, let us sit. I would rather not stand for whatever time remains.
So in Horus Rising, the first book of the Horus Heresy, which is like the cornerstone of, well, more than 40k. Oh, I know we are already in the 42nd millennium, but in that book there's the mention of Peter Egon Momus. He was an architect on 6319, a world, the world that Horus ended up ruling after the Crusade, the Great Crusade. And Egon Momus, while not being a very likable man because of his demeanor, like a guy who was sweating profusely all the time, like kind of, he's damp, he's so damp. People didn't quite like him, but he was the best at his job as an architect. And he lamented the destruction and the burning of the churches and holy sites. Like, despite the fact that they were kind of like, you know, against what the emperor stood for, they were still monuments that symbolized, that held a bunch of history. And I do believe that Gilliman also is somebody who fancies these kind of buildings still. I mean, the whole thing of the Omega, they kind of still strive on sort of Greco-Roman architecture, you know? So, yeah, let's go on. Wine, of course. Always wine. I've got to say, this is stellar voice work so far.
And yours. This is very good wine. It's old.
You have a fine appreciation of wine, friend Apocalypsis. My father gave this to me on my 15th birthday, and said I should drink it on my wedding night.
And you never married?
Never found anyone willing to put up with me.
Oops.
I was a devilish rogue back then.
No longer, it would seem. A devilish rogue turned priest. Sounds like quite the tale.
It is, but some wounds run deep, and it does no good to reopen them.
Fair enough.
Ooh.
Friend Apocalypsis, tell me,
That
what
ring,
did you
though.
mean when you said this place was soon to be gone?
Exactly what I said. Even in your isolated state, you must have heard of the Emperor and his crusade to stamp out religion and belief in the supernatural. Soon, he and his forces will arrive to tear this place down.
I know, but it makes no difference to me. I believe what I believe, and no...
I like how he used the word stamp. The Emperor was just Eren Yeager. with his drip going about stamping everything down. I'm gonna rule the world. There can be no xenophobia if there's only one race. Ah, man. Okay.
The amount of hectoring from some warmongering despot will sway me.
That is an obstinate point of view.
It is faith. It would seem I'm not as fickle as you would posit, eh?
Faith. A willing belief in the unbelievable without proof.
Faith's strength is just that. It requires no proof. Belief is enough.
That is wrong. Okay, so there's this fun, well, maybe not so fun thing when it comes to religion, and that is the fact that so many people have this strange belief that you can just believe and that's just it. People would simply just pray and think that something will happen. The question is usually that I like to ask is, what is it that you actually believe in? Do you have a strong fundament, an unshakable feeling on something that is tangible? Because the Bible makes it kind of clear into what beliefs truly means. It's just like anything. If you want to believe in something, it's all about trust. Trusting in an entity that will do the things that they have spoken of. The entire book, the Bible, which I actually have one here, a New International Version. Yep. And this one holds the entire thing, both the New and the Old Testament. And in that you have such things as the prophecies that God makes, but those need to be fulfilled. Jesus in his coming, because let's say that modern society has a strong focus on only the New Testament and for some reason does not want to look back on the old one. However, Jesus, through his teachings, because that was what he mostly did, since the scribes and Pharisees, which were kind of like the high priest of the Jewish society back then, were not teaching the teachings of Moses anymore, and they were just kind of going about and teaching their own traditions. So at least in the tellings of both Luke, John, and Mark, you have Jesus coming and kind of more or less chastising them by the fact that they did neither recognize him, nor did they acknowledge him or the teachings that he or God had given many years before, which is why Jesus was then appointed to explain the parables to them, the similitudes of what the Bible writes. So John 14:29 says one thing that is so simple, and it says that these things I have told you so that when they happen, you may believe. Jesus more or less explaining that faith is about seeing things taking place. You can believe in whatever you want, but that's not truly faith. It's about building trust. If I come to you guys and say that tomorrow I will upload a video about the TTS series. If I do so, then you can trust me. That's how it is. And if I don't, then I'm a bullshitter, you know? And it's as simple as that. And you don't have to twist and turn and just go about and believing in whatever fancy stuff that you may feel comfortable with. And that's usually the thing. People casting their own emotion onto stuff instead of actually looking at them what they really say. But yeah, I'm pausing too much. I'm sorry, but I kind of feel like we should be talking about these things.
You call faith powerful. I call it dangerous. Think of what people in the grip of faith have done in the past. All the atrocities down the centuries that can be traced back to faith. Faith is both the causation and the justification for so much evil.
Have you come here just to provoke me? I am no longer a violent man. Such a goal would be boring and fruitless for the both of us. If this is all you are here for, I suggest you leave.
You are right, of course. I am being discourteous, and I apologize. I came to learn of this place, not antagonize its guardian.
I accept your apology, Apocalypsis. Do you wish to see the church?
I do.
Then come with me. the Fulgur Lapis.
So this is a holy stone?
It is, yes.
Why?
Why is it the Fulgur Lapis?
I mean, why is it holy? Was it deposited on the ground by your god? Was a man martyred here? Or did some young girl receive some sort of revelation while praying at its base?
Nothing so bland, rest assured, friend Apocalypsis. Thousands of years ago, a local holy man who was blind.
He's referring to some Middle Eastern myth. Who was she? Okay, I can't quite remember it, but I know the stories. There's always one. The same thing with the statuettes of Maria and the waters of this and that. People also using some of the sources from Bethesda and not the video game company, the actual healing site. Also the place where Lazarus was healed and everything. I mean, come on. These are things that give people comfort. Most of the time, they always have a placebo effect. From what I've come to learn, the faith is not lying in that. Whatever healing that people are searching for, does not come from these artifacts. I mean, you know, perhaps you have seen the famous meme of Jesus going like, so, I die on a cross. What part of me dying on a cross makes you think that I like crosses? Like, it's logical. And that's just from the thinking there. And if I cast out my own thinking, my own meanings here, Bible describes from the book of Jeremiah, as God wanted to form a new covenant, that he was tired of people's sacrificials offerings and them offering food sacrificed to idols, iconifications, useless in his eyes. But I digress. Let's keep going.
Was walking in the hills hereabouts when a sudden storm came in over the Western Ocean. He hurried back down to the village below, but it was a long way, and the storm broke before he could reach safety. The holy man took shelter from the storm in the lee of this stone, at the height of the storm in the lee of the heavens. When he thought all was lost, he was lifted up and heard the voice of our Creator. And so he saw the stone wreathed in a blue fire, in which he saw the face of our Creator.
Did you not say he was blind?
Ah, he was blind no longer. The power of our Creator cured him of his affliction. He immediately ran back to the village and told the people there of the miracle.
And then?
The holy man returned to the Fulgur Lapis and instructed the townspeople to build a church around it. The story of his healing soon spread. Within but a few years, thousands were crossing the Silver Bridge to visit the shrine, for a spring had begun to flow from the base of the stone, and its waters were said to be imbued with healing properties.
And I wonder how much the priests benefited from it all. And what? It could cure diseases? Mend broken limbs?
So the church records say. This bathing chamber was constructed around the stone, and people across the land came to bathe in the sacred waters while they still flowed.
I have heard tales of a similar nature in the Far East. A young girl claimed to have seen a holy vision of a woman while bathing near the springs closest to her home.
Yeah.
She described a woman conspicuously similar to the holy woman of a religious order of which her family was a member. Bathing houses were established there too, but for fear of diminishing the rate at which the owners of the bathhouses could admit pilgrims, the waters were only changed once a day. The dying and diseased came in droves, passing through that water in the hundreds every day, so I'm sure you can imagine what a horrible slop it was at the end. They were but pools of blood, sloughed off skin, scabs, bits of cloth and bandage, an abominable soup of malady. The only miracle was that anyone emerged alive. Such a miracle was infrequent at best.
Yeah.
I cannot justify the actions of the greedy or the impure. I can assure you that did not happen here, if that is your concern.
Hematite from a banded ironstone formation. Exposed by landslip during the storm, most likely. That would explain the strike. It seems to me that your holy man was not blinded by any physical defect, but was a result of hysteria or earlier mental trauma. It is not unheard of to be cured in such a manner.
Are you attempting to debunk the miracle this church was founded upon? It was our Creator's will. And if your explanation were to substitute mine, the nature of the event is still what I would call a miracle. The Creator's face was seen. His voice was heard. It is a malicious thing to seek to destroy another's faith, Apocalypsis.
I do not aim to be malicious. I am trying to explain how such a thing could have happened without the intervention of a godly power. You think that the way we perceive the world is the way it actually is, but you cannot perceive the external world directly. Indeed, none of us can. Instead, we know only our ideas or interpretations of objects in the world. The human...
Oh, I know where this is going. I attended some psychology classes and some personal ones for myself. And an example that people will always bring up is the shadow of when you're sleeping. This one it's a classic. Like, oh, so that shape that you're seeing when you walk in the hallway on your way to the toilet during the night, it's not the Slender Man who's standing there. It's just your coat. Yeah, I know this one. I'm pretty sure this is where it's going.
The human brain is a marvelous organ, priest, and it is especially adept at constructing images of faces and voices from limited information. Imagine your holy man sheltering from the storm in the cover of this great stone when the lightning bolt hit, the fire and the noise, the pounding surge of elemental energy. Isn't it possible that an already religious man might, in such circumstances, perceive sights and sounds of a divine nature? We do it all the time. When you wake with dread in the dead of night, is that darkness in the corner not an intruder instead of just a shadow? The creak of a floorboard, the tread of a murderer?
I agree. The human mind is a powerful thing. What I value most, however, is the ability to reflect upon the past and reach a conclusion that that tap against my window was a natural occurrence, and not a murderer come to kill a lonely priest.
Given the origins and evolution of religions in the human species, it seems a far more convincing and likely explanation that it was a figment of happenstance and a creative mind. A holy man might make a miracle of simple good fortune because of a predisposition to believe in the supernatural. Don't you agree?
No, I do not.
Really? You strike me as an intelligent man. Why can you not concede at least to the possibility of such an explanation?
Because I too have seen my God and heard his voice. Nothing can compare with knowing personally and completely that the divine exist.
Ah, personal experience. The most valued kind. Tell me, where did you receive this vision?
On a battlefield in the lands of the Frank, many, many years ago.
The Frank were brought into unity long ago. The last battle was fought nearly half a century ago. You must have been a young man back then.
I was. Young and foolish. Young and foolish.
Hardly a prime candidate for divine intervention. But then I've found that the least likely to receive it are often the most in need of it. I have read your holy book before. To me, most of the men who appear on the pages are far from ideal role models. Perhaps I should not be so surprised. The devilish rogue sits with me today.
Your tone may be pleasant, but your spirit is nothing but adversarial. You say you wish to learn of me, and this church will come. Let us joust with words, thrusting and parrying one's certainties with argument and counter-argument. Say what you will, but come sunrise, you will leave and not return.
This is my intention. I have other matters to attend to, but tonight I have to talk with you. My adversarial spirit is not born from any mal will towards you, Uriah. My malcontent is born from my love for humanity. I would see our species in an age of wonder, without these constant wars and the ignorance that blankets our kind like a plague. I would see us ascend. I would see all of our kind raised to the status of godhood that is worshipped throughout the galaxy. But we are enslaved to the fantastical notions that reside within that book of yours, and all the others like it. That damnable book in your hands is a curse, and I would see you rid of it.
You go so far as to mock my holy book too? This damnable book provides a code by which I have lived a peaceful life, in which I have built more than I have destroyed, helped more than hurt. My time before this book was nothing but destroying and hurting. Untold thousands more live similar lives thanks to the guidance provided by our willingness to believe in something greater than ourselves. Tell me, Apocalypsis, when we, as a species, find your vision to be a reality, what will become of us? What will unite us? Peace can only be attained through an aspiration or a common enemy. And when that aspiration disappears and we as a species are gods without rivals, who will we turn on? We will turn on each other, friend Apocalypsis. Your vision will bring only an eternity of war. When gods clash, galaxies burn.
So what would you have me say? There are more faiths than yours, Uriah, and each faith has equally zealous defenders. How many generations of conflict until your message of peace turns to a crusade against those who do not share your beliefs? Where there are differences, humanity will find them. And these differences are so fundamentally rooted in you as others' beliefs are in others. There can be no resolution without conflict.
You find nothing but exceptions to my arguments, never any rules by which to measure them.
How can I find rules in an inherently hypocritical system? Your book has been rewritten, translated, and twisted to fit the needs of hundreds of anonymous authors for hundreds of years. The faith is eternal, but the story and morals are not. One man hears his dead grandfather, and he is locked away in an asylum. But if he heard the voice of God, he would be venerated and might well become a saint. How is this a logical and rational system?
It is my faith. Respect.
That's the thing. Apocalypsis is right. He's 100% correct. There's this weird thought that you can just go about and believe in whatever. That's not all. You actually need proof, physical things that that transpire. Things that the Bible, for example, if that is once again the book that he's using here, are referring to. The Bible is filled with prophecies. And as often mentioned, like Jesus himself said, if people want to believe, they must see the things that are predicted and see them happen. That's how you form a belief in something, that you have trust, that you know for certain that these things will transpire. And then you also can explain them to other people in a simple manner, which is more or less like kind of what I'm trying to do here. And he's right, Apocalypsis is fully right, the system is bad. We see so much evil being used here, people rewriting the words as they see fit. Bloody Pastor Clever Dollar, I read some years ago, like, you know, these evangelical pastors wanting to sponsor, what's it called? Using the tithe that their churches are paying them to have like fancy jets, you know. This is a preaching machine. It's ridiculous. And just, I do not understand how it is that the lack of acknowledgement that something is obviously wrong. Acknowledge at least that first. And if you want to change somebody's mind, you can just say, I believe in this, therefore. That could apply for anybody. That's not a discourse. That's not an argument. It has no basis in anything. Now, Apocalypse says that he has read this. Now, an individual who actually is within faith could then challenge him on the thing that he read. That would be the way to actually have a clever conversation. But said man, I think, is still as foolish as he was when he was younger.
My beliefs as I respect yours, despite your constant slights against my life's dedication.
Did you not say we should joust? Why does your faith require such protection? Is it not robust enough to withstand my questioning? No one else on this world enjoys such protection from scrutiny. So why should you and your faith be singled out for special treatment?
Why is it that faith is being targeted for destruction? Perhaps there is enough truth behind my words that the Emperor, in all his wisdom, fears their holy power. Or is it because there are people too obstinate to accept that there may be something that science cannot quite explain?
Dark Mesa? We still can't explain why it is that we have a same amount of... Well, okay, we can explain that the speed of objects within our galaxy still goes to the outer. It's equally distributed, although most of our mass is concentrated within the cores of our galaxies. That's because we have dark matter around us, which is holding... Like, you know, when a ballerina is spinning around, when they stretch their arms, they move slower. When they gather them, they move faster, increasing the velocity because most of the mass is concentrated towards the center. Same thing applies with galaxies. If you've seen spiral galaxies like ours, the Milky Way, you see the spiral arms, but most of the luminosity from the galaxy comes from the core, which is where most of the mass is concentrated, where most of the stars are, and also active nucleus. Wow. How did I mix those two together? Black hole, let's just call it there. But on the outer end, we still observe that although most of the mass is there, the velocity of stars in the outer perimeter of our galaxy is still moving at the same rate as the one in the center, explained by the fact that there is something even more massive on the outer end, which is dark matter, which is a thing that we have yet to be able to explain. We don't know. We don't know where it comes from. We can only observe his interactions, and even the few detectors that we have had here in Japan or whatever else in the world, we cannot detect a damn thing. And it's a field that I respect everybody who goes on and study, because gosh, is it hard. But anyways, that's one of the few secrets that we have yet to grasp.
I have seen my God,
and it's driving people
saw his
crazy.
Face and heard his words in my soul.
Do not expect me or anyone else to give your experience credence, Uriah, despite what you think you saw. You may believe it to be real, but just because you believe something to be true does not make it so.
I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. That day on the fields of Frank has never lost its clarity. I relive it with every waking moment in which I am not occupied.
And where in Frank did this miraculous vision take place, priest?
On the killing field of Gadwere.
You were at Gadwere.
I was.
Will you tell me what happened?
I'll tell you what happened. But first, I need another drink.
More wine. Or is this time vodka? Oh, it's the wine.
No, friend Apocalypsis, this is the good stuff. I wouldn't deign to drink this from a tumbler. Now we will drink from a glass.
Let the wine stir for a few minutes. Enjoying its aroma. I hate when people are being so fancy.
The water of life.
Finally, spirits both you and I can believe in.
Give it a minute.
Funny.
Let the vapors build.
Have you ever had those moments where your parents are inviting you to, or at least when your parents are inviting guests over, they have to do the whole fancy stuff where everything is like, like you go ask your parents like, I didn't know we had this at home. And especially the good bottle of wine, like a 5-liter bottle that is this massive that they carry around like it is a new child that they need to introduce to the family. I don't know where it comes from. I just like it. I just like it a lot.
It intensifies the flavor. Swirl it a little. See the slicks on the side of the glass? They are called tears. Since they are long and descending slowly, we know the drink is strong and full-bodied.
And how long must we wait?
Patience, friend Apocalypsis. This wine has sat for many decades. It can sit for a few more minutes. Nose the drink. Feel the aromas and how they stimulate your senses. Allow yourself a moment. Let the scents awaken the memories of their origin.
May I ask a personal question while we wait?
Well, it depends on the question, doesn't it?
Why is it you carry a timepiece that doesn't function?
It is a family relic, you see. It has been with us since before even Old Night. No one knows when it broke, but as legend goes, it ticks before
50
disaster
seconds
strikes.
to midnight.
I never believed it. Nor did my father. When I found it, however,
Or was
it was a minute later than I always remembered it.
a minute to midnight?
Now it's a minute from midnight. My father always jested that the day it struck midnight would be the beginning of the end. I've kept it for decades. Never once seen it budge. I check it often, as if it could warn me of danger. Maybe there is hope, eh?
A
That
grim
hand, though.
portent.
The
You
two
seem
knuckles.
to surround yourself with grim beliefs, Uriah.
Perhaps. But let's not ruin this good wine with such dour thoughts. My story has not yet even begun. We've waited long enough. Drink, friend Apocalypsis, generously. Hang on to the taste before it is gone.
Ah, that's a flavor I have not had in a long time. I didn't think any remained.
It is an old bottle, one I rescued from the ruins of my parents' home.
You make a habit of keeping old alcohol around.
Aye, a throwback to my wild youth. I was fond of the drink, a little too much even, if you take my meaning.
I do. Many a great man has been brought low by such an addiction.
You ain't having an Astartes lever
You
to
said you
tolerate
wanted
this
to know
drink.
of cvery?
If you are ready and willing to tell me of it, yes.
Willing, yes. Ready? Well, I suppose we will find out, eh?
cvery was a bloody day. It was hard on all who were there. I understand.
I may be old, and my eyes may not be what they once were, but I can still tell that you are far too young to know of cvery. You would not have even been born when that battle was fought.
Trust me, I know of cvery.
How did he not recognize the fact that he is wearing a ring of the Thunder Warriors? Like, he is such a tall, massive guy. The one thing that you will go and assume, I mean, he's not completely oblivious to the existence of the Emperor. The Emperor and his legion of Thunder Warriors, for his sake. I mean, he's clearly one of them.
I should tell you a little of myself first. Who I was back then, and how I came to find God on the battlefield of cvery. If you have half a mind to hear it, anyway.
What is a story without its context? Of course. Say what you feel needs to be said.
I was born in the town below this church, nearly 80 years ago. The youngest son of the local lord. My clan had come through the final years of Old Night with much of their wealth intact. They owned all the lands around these parts, from this very mountain all the way to the mainland bridge. I wish I could say I was treated badly as a child, you know, to give reason for why I turned out the way I did. I cannot. I was indulged and became something of a spoiled brat, given to drinking, carousing, and bouts of petulance. Looking back, I realize what a little shit I was. But of course, it's
I like how he has the same face.
in their youth and realize too late all the mistakes they made and regrets they carry.
We'll grab some water.
Anyway, I decided in the adolescent fires of rebellion that I was going to travel the world and see whatever free corners of it remained in the wake of the Emperor's conquest. So much of the world had been brought under his sway.
He ended the wars that were destroying the planet and defeated dozens of tyrants and despots. Without his armies, mankind would have descended into anarchy and destroyed itself within generations.
Well, the Emperor
He still
was
is
and
a
still-
tyrant.
Yeah.
Perhaps humanity would have been better off that way, rather than under the shadow of his accursed eagle. Maybe the universe decided we'd had our chance, that our time was up.
Nonsense. The universe cares not a whit for our actions or us.
Nope.
Our fate is wrought by our hands, and no others.
A philosophical point we will no doubt return to, but I was telling you of my youth.
But of course, please, continue.
Thank you. Well, after I announced my intention to travel the world, my father was good enough to grant me a generous stipend and a retinue of soldiers to protect me on my journeys. I left that very day and crossed the Silver Bridge 4 days later, traveling across a land recovering from war, which was growing fat on the labors decreed by the Emperor. Hammers beat up plates of armor, blackened factories churned out weapons, and entire towns of seamstresses created new uniforms for his armies.
Whomever composed this, he
I
makes me
crossed to
want
Europa
to think
and
of
cruised my way across the continent, seeing the eagle-stamped banner everywhere I went.
Dark
Every
Empire
town
score
and
from
city,
Star Wars.
I saw people giving thanks to the Emperor and his mighty thunder giants. But I'll be damned if any of it was genuine. It was like they were going through the motions, because they knew it was dangerous not to.
Of course.
I'd seen the thunder giants as a child, but never in the wake of a conquest. Never quite seen the reality of them before that point. I was drunk and whoring my way down the Tali Peninsula when I came across a garrison of the Emperor's super soldiers at a ruined clifftop fortress.
They move like
My damned romantic rebellious soul couldn't help but try and bait the giants. I called them many names. Freak, slave, the minor demons of a greater devil. I even told them the Emperor's only goal was to enslave all of the human race to his own towering ego.
No, I got this, bro.
After having seen them battle in the fields of Frank, I shuddered to think of the fear I was in then. I thought I was being clever. In my own stupor, I convinced myself I was a hero. Looking back, I would never even have passed as a martyr. Eventually, one of the giants broke rank and approached me. I was monumentally drunk. I felt invincible as only a drunk and a fool could. This warrior was huge, far larger than any human I had ever seen. His entire body was encased in heavy, powered armor that enclosed his chest and arms. The sheer power of each soldier was never made clearer to me than when that giant came over to me and lifted me up, tearing my shirt and upsetting me greatly. I kicked at his armor and beat my fists into bloody pulps against his chest, but he just laughed at me. I screamed at him to let me go, and he did just that, telling me to shut my mouth before tossing me off the cliff and into the sea. By the time I'd climbed the great steps back up into the village, they were gone, and I was left with just myself and a hatred greater than I had ever known. Stupid, really. I was asking for it, and it was only a matter of time until someone put me in my place.
And after Tali?
Here and there, I've forgotten a lot of those years, truth be told. I was drunk most of my waking hours. I know I took a sandskimmer across the Mediterranean wastes, and traversed the wastelands of the North African conclaves that Shankal reduced to an arid desert. All I found were settlements that were busy paying homage to the Emperor. So I carried onwards, far into the east, to see the ruins of Ursh and the fallen bastards.
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
Even there, however, in places so far away as to be the most desolate and remote corners of the world, I still found those who gave
I like
thanks
how,
to the
nevertheless, he
Emperor and his
managed to
gene-engineered
acquire
warriors. I
at
couldn't
least
understand.
rising up the ranks to acquire these vehicles that he used to travel. Like the fool that he was still managed to do so much.
Didn't these people know they just exchanged one tyrant for another? Then again, it wasn't their choice.
Humanity was on the brink of extinction. I cannot convey this point any more clearly. Without unity, and without the Emperor, there would be no human race. I cannot believe that you do not see that.
Oh, I see it all right. I see that very clearly. The devilish rogue did not, however. I was young and full of the fires of youth that see any form of control as oppression. Though they don't appreciate it, it is the function of the youth to push at the boundaries of the previous generation, to poke and prod and establish their own rules. I was no different from any other youth. Well, perhaps a little.
Bit.
So you'd traveled the world, and hadn't found any corner of it that hadn't sworn allegiance to the Emperor. Where did you go next?
I returned home for a spell, bearing gifts I'd mostly stolen, and then set off again. But this time I went out as a soldier of fortune instead of a tourist. I'd heard rumors of unrest in the land of the Frank, and fancied myself a renowned war hero.
Always
The
France.
Frank were a fractious people, even
For once, they were the few who did not wave the flag.
before the days of unity. They were never ones to bow to invaders, even the ones who posed as benign. Once I reached the continent, I had heard of Havelek de Gros and the Battle of Averroy, and rode straight for the town.
Avalroy, a town poisoned by the bitterness of a madman whose meager skill fell far short of his ambition.
Now that much is obvious. Back then, the story was that Havelek was found wrongly accused of the brutal murder of the woman the Emperor appointed as governor. He was set to be shot by a firing squad when his brothers and friends attacked the local army units running the execution. The soldiers were torn to shreds, and the death of a few locals in the fighting turned a small-scale riot into open rebellion. It got ugly faster than the town had time to think what they were doing. But by then, it was too late. Got it. By the time I reached Averroy, full of piss and vinegar for the coming fight, Havelek had rallied a number of the local townships to his cause and amassed quite an army. It was magnificent, friend Apocalypsis, for it had been everything I had so desperately searched for. Icons of the Emperor being torn down, colourful buntings hanging from every window, bands playing in the streets constantly while Havelek and all of us, his soldiers, marched up and down the town. I swear it felt like we were an army of devilish, daring youths.
That's how everything
We
went
should have
down.
been training. We should have prepared. But our courage was buoyed up by the festivities, and more towns rose up against the Emperor's rule by the day. Within the week, we had amassed an army of nearly 40,000 strong. Truly, it seemed, I had found my glorious rebellion I had so desperately craved.
Couple of thousand.
It was heroic and courageous and dangerous, and it spoke to my romanticism for the heroic freedom fighters of old. We were absolutely sure that we would be the spark that would light the fires of rebellion all across the world, and see the autocrat tumbled from his self-imposed rule. Then we heard that the Thunderbolt and Lightning armies were marching from the east, and we set off in grand procession. Making all due haste, marching, we reached Cvery, and set up our defenses atop a line of hills directly in the path of our enemies. We had all thought ourselves tactical geniuses, holding this strategically advantageous position. Had we any training and discipline, it might have made a difference.
We have the high
We held
ground.
the high ground, and both of our flanks were anchored in strong positions. On the left were the ruins of the Ganduere bastion.
Oh my, that's so typical. After I watched, what was it, season 3 of Vikings, that literally began to be the only thing that I saw. Every single time that somebody was talking about tactical advantages and positioning themselves on a hill. I have the high ground.
On the right, the desolate marshes through which nothing could pass.
You must have known it was madness to engage the Emperor's armies. I mean, you had no hope of defeating them. His warriors were bred for battle and spent every waking moment in combat training.
Hell yeah.
Perhaps we knew. Maybe we didn't want to think about it. We were so full of hope, of optimism, we wouldn't allow ourselves to even consider defeat. When the Emperor's armies came into sight, we were nearly 50,000 strong, and we faced an army estimated at a mere 5,000. It was hard not to feel.
Okay, thank you for reminding me the armies in context. 5,000 Astartes, well, not quite. Thunder Warriors. Nonetheless, these guys were brutal. Wow. That is unfair if I've ever heard any. The Horus Heresy, by example, lost billions upon billions of people. 50, 40,000. Against, like, okay, had it put like a legion of 700. Yeah, I mean, you need to put an uneven number there. 700. I may understand that, oh, there must have been a bit of a struggle. It made sense we could somehow, like, try to pierce and unseal the armors and whatever. That could make sense, just by drowning them in sheer numbers. But 5,000? Are they dumb?
That we could win the day, especially with Havelek riding up and down and firing our blood. His brother tried to calm him, but it was far too late. Eventually, maybe a kilometer from our position, the giants halted their advance. We should have waited too. Instead of letting the spirit of the moment die, we charged down the hillside like mad, glorious fools, screaming war cries and waving swords, pistols, and rifles over our heads. It was maybe 6 or 7 ranks deep, and we only covered half the distance before the giants shouldered their weapons and opened fire.
Oof. Mini grenades exploding.
By God, the noise. I'll never forget it.
The
First volley was thunder that ripped down the line. And our first 5 ranks were cut down to a man before they could even scream. Each of their bullets was a small bomb that ripped limbs from bodies and burst men open from the inside like wet sacks. I turned to shout, I was struck in the back of the head and fell forward into the ruptured body of another man. He had been defeated in the opening volley, but these warriors were without mercy. Havelek had somehow survived the initial barrage with only superficial wounds. And as I lay on my back, dying, I watched him stare, dumbfounded, as the leading thunder warrior cleaved him in two with a single swing of his chain blade. Looking back at Havelek's army, I saw my terror mirrored on the face of every man and woman left, who were all begging for mercy, throwing down their weapons, trying to surrender, but the slaughter continued, heedless of their perils. They marched right up to them and hacked into them without mercy. All those people were cut apart so quickly and brutalized with such economy of force, I couldn't believe so many people could die in so short a time. It was not the glorious battle I had dreamed of. It was mechanized butchery. If I could have ran, I would have. And I'm not ashamed to say I laid there weeping, listening to the awful sound of people dying, and the wet sound of flesh being shorn from bodies, and the stench of voided bowels and open bellies, until the mercy of darkness overcame me. When I woke, surprised I'd still lived, it was dark. In the distance I heard the victory chants of the Thunder Warriors drifting across the fields, along with the smoke of victory pyres. Havelek's army had been destroyed. Not routed, not put to flight, destroyed. In less than an hour, 50,000 men and women had been killed. I never learned of any other survivors. Weak, and laying in a field of human parts, I began to weep once more. I was in agony, bleeding to death and thinking how absolutely pointless my life had been. The heartache and ruin I had visited upon others in my reckless pursuit of hedonism and self-interest. I wept for my family and myself. And that was when I realized I wasn't alone.
Who was with you?
The power of the divine. I opened my eyes and saw a golden face above me. A face of such radiance and perfection that my tears were no longer shed for my self-pity, but for his beauty. The light radiated from the figure, and I averted my eyes for fear I'd be blinded. I had been in pain, yes, but now that pain was gone, and I knew I was seeing the face of the divine. I could not describe that face to you, not with all the poetic imagery in the world at my disposal, but it was the most exquisite thing I had ever seen. I felt myself lifted up and thought this was the end. And then the face spoke, and I knew I was destined to live.
What did this face say to you?
Why do you deny me? Accept me, and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way.
Did you reply?
I couldn't. To utter any words would have been base. In any case, my tongue was quite stilled by the awesome vision of God.
What made you think it was God? You were a dying man on a battlefield, surrounded by your dead comrades, and you were having an epiphany about the futility of the life you had led. Think back, priest. Surely there is another explanation?
I need no other explanation. You may be wise in many things, Apocalypsis, but you cannot know what goes on in my own mind. I heard the voice of God and saw his face. Does the perception of events truly matter if the results are singular? I was borne up and set into a deep slumber, and when I awoke, my wounds were healed.
So a fun thing about this is that okay, so the fun thing, or the crazy thing about the Emperor is that while in his pursuit of conquering the universe and spreading this knowledge of science, he has this tendency of playing on people's predispositions already, making up himself appear like godlike, you know, when you show something and performs these, dare I say, nearly inhuman tasks, there's no way that people are just going to consider yourself to be just human. Obviously, he tries his best to make his arguments, but first impressions are usually the thing that make people determine what you look like. Now, one predisposition for this, now we do know that Uriah was not a believing man in the past, so he may not know about this. But a lot of the iconography that the Emperor sometimes uses it can be found sometimes in scripture. For example, you have the book of Daniel that describes something like a son of man. And as I've mentioned, this is usually used to describe Jesus. Now, this is not God. There's a huge difference here. In the New Testament, there's a constant mention of the difference. Jesus himself calls him Father. He told people the Lord's Prayer. There's a reason why he was asking God to take away the act of him having to sacrifice himself on the cross. So I don't know why, for some reason, people have this weird belief that they are one and the same as an entity. However, in Revelation 1, which is the last book, you have Apostle John, again, kind of apocalypsis here, seeing being revealed some visions. And in that, in verse 13, he says, "And in the middle of the lampstand I saw one like a son of man, clothed in robes reaching to his feet, and girded across his chest with golden sash. And his head and his hair were white like wool, like snow, and his eyes were like flames of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze when it has been made to glow in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters." So you kind of see like this image of something that is glorious beyond belief, and how are you going to try to explain that to an individual in a simple manner? Well, the Emperor kind of needs to work on his entrances. Well, kind of like he's been doing
had been
here.
embedded in my skull, nearly a centimeter away from severing my spinal cord. When I rose, I searched for fellow survivors. I was alone. I decided to return to the land of my birth, but when I returned, I found my family home in ruins. The townsfolk told me Scandian raiders from the north had come to plunder my family's wealth. So they killed my brother and tortured my parents and sisters in an attempt to make my father give up the family treasures. My father had a weak heart and died before they could learn his secrets. I found my home in ruins and my family as bleached cadavers. There were no amends to be made at home. All I had to remember them by was their wealth, good wine, and this damned watch.
I am sorrowed by your loss, Uriah. If it is any consolation, the Scandians would not accept unity and were wiped out near 3 decades ago.
I know, but I do not revel in death anymore. The men who killed my family will have been judged by God, and that is justice enough for me.
That is noble of you.
I took those few keepsakes from the ruins and made my way to the nearest settlement, thinking I'd get blind drunk and try to figure out what to do with my life. Halfway there, I met an old priest in need of help, in desperate search of the next caretaker of the Folga Labis. I knew I had found my purpose. I had spent my entire life until then living for myself, but when I saw the spire of that church, I knew that God had a purpose for me. I should have died at Gaduere, but I was saved for a reason.
And what was the reason?
To serve God, to bring his words to the people, to do good where others would not, to be a beacon in the coming dark.
And that's what you've been doing here?
That is what I've been trying to do, but the Emperor's promulgators traverse the globe with his message of denouncing the supernatural and criminalizing the devout. I assume that is why you are here, and why none of my congregation have come here tonight.
You would be correct. In a manner of speaking, I have come to try and convince you of the error of your ways. To learn of you and to show you that there is no need for any divine powers to guide humanity. This is the last church on Terra, and it falls to me to offer you this chance to embrace the new way willingly.
Or?
There is no or, my dear priest. Come. Let us go back out into the church as we talk. I want to teach you of all that belief in gods has done for humanity down the ages. The bloodshed, the horror, and the persecution. I will tell you of this, and you will see how damaging such belief is.
And then, you will go on your way, friend Apocalypsis?
It is my sincerest hope that we will go together. You know of gene breeding?
Aye. Very little is not gene-bred these days.
And you have heard of the once great city of Zoser in the Nordafric conclaves?
Yes, I have been to Zoser. At least I saw what my guide told me were its ruins.
True. Not much is left. Anyway, the scientists of Zoser sought to end a great famine that was sweeping the Nordafric conclaves through gene-breeding animals that would grow more quickly and more easily in their harsh climate. When one of the local cults caught wind of the gene breeding, they saw it as an affront to their god. They were very much against the modification of genetics because they thought that their god had designed them as they were, and it was a sin to meddle in such things. This cult, the Zozerites, saw the lead scientist, an Apashtar, as the next embodiment of evil, seeking to defile all the people by feeding them the embodiment of sin. They went on a rampage, stabbing and clubbing any Apashtar they could find. Of course, the Apashtar retaliated, and rioting spread throughout the city and left close to 1,000 people dead. They did not again try to gene breed new farm stock, and untold thousands more died to the famine.
Is there a point to that story?
Absolutely. It typifies religion and tells a universal tale of religious behavior that has been reoccurring since the beginning of human history. Religion actively impedes forward progress by producing stubborn people who fear advancement.
A far-fetched example, friend Apocalypse.
And again, so I think there has been this huge misunderstanding throughout the history that regarding wars, regarding the halting of progress, because this has definitely not been something that should have happened. Obviously, I give Apocalypse's credit in what he says, because this have all transpired. People have been using that as a justification that, oh, you are now committing evil, we are committing apostasy. If a child is sick, why wouldn't you operate on the child to make him better? if something within nature is crumbling apart, why wouldn't you want to fix it by the means of biology? We see also in a way that sometimes our willingness into improving things can be faulty, but give credit to what credit is due. You have such cases as Apostle Paul, whom I have mentioned before. And Paul's deal was, of course, that he was pushing forth and doing the work of Jesus afterwards as one of his biggest apostles. Now, as he was sending letters towards the entirety of both the Middle East and Greece, and to whatever churches remained of Christianity, because people were being slaughtered, to remind these individuals what it was that they were fighting for. And in Ephesians, so to the church of Ephesians, where he was sending them letters, Ephesians 6 verse 12, it says this: "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authority, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the days of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of evil. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." We are literally never talking about the fact that people are launching themselves into crusades, armoring themselves to the teeth in battle gear to have to go and wage war. These were all spiritual in meanings, that people should stay firm in their belief, to understand that although a bunch of evil deeds were being committed, that they were not to reluct to the same methods as the evil ones. And that was it. That has always been it. Learning what to do, what is righteous. Learning that through the word of God. But people have always strayed away from it.
Ellipsis. One freakish story cannot serve as proof of theory that all belief in the divine is a bad thing. Why don't you tell the story of the time a church organized a program to help the poor and the sick and the dying? Why do you not tell a story of when faith and religion gave a community the strength to stick together and help each other through old night? Through faith comes character, and through our character there is moral strength. Without such guidance, the world would descend into anarchy.
A secular government with strict laws and programs could accomplish all that you have listed without creating stubbornness or creating a dependability on a church that would impose further taxes upon the poor and make waste of otherwise productive time. The idea that the church is a moral compass just isn't true. Where the church is strong, it causes cruelty.
Also, there's such things as the separation of church and state. The Bible describes such things as the chase of glory, like there is a glory under the sun, the glory of man and the glory of God. That these are two different things that the human desires for, and those should be separated and have forever been separated.
Intense belief produces intense hostility. Only when faith loses its force can a society hope to become humane and progress.
I don't believe that. My holy book gives instructions on how to live a good life. It has lessons humanity needs. I have benefited greatly, as have the people in the town below.
Are you sure? I have read your holy book, and much of it is bloody and vengeful. I suspect an outside spectator would view the people on those pages not as exemplars of proper behavior, but terrifying examples of corrupt morals.
You are missing the point, Apocalypsis. Much of the text is not meant to be taken literally. It is symbolic or allegorical.
That is exactly my point. You priests pick and choose which bits of your book to take literally and which to read as symbolic. And that is a personal matter.
That is true. That is very true. There are things where that there are verses that are very clear onto how it is that they should be utilized, how they should be read, while others are supposed to be taken as parables and you need to understand them. But they are usually always explained afterwards, like Luke 8 verse 1, that the word is the seed. The seed is always utilized. The seed is something that gets planted into a field, the field being the heart of man. It grows and flourishes into a tree as it is nourished, as it used all the time, that people should be growing spiritually with the seed, with the word of God. This is a parable that is used all the time. It's one of the simplest ones to understand. And it's not, this one is one that nobody can pick and choose. In 1 John verse 4, it is told that one should be testing the spirits. What does it mean to test the spirit? Well, it simply means that one should not just be taking the words that it's told to you at face value. You should know if this is the right word or not, because false apostles will exist. These are the things that are constantly mentioned, that people will always come forth disguising themselves as actual Christian and give you falsities to their own gain. These things were prophesied many, many years before Christ even came, and he as well kept on saying so. So it is unsurprising. The whole religion is about testing people, making people understand that they should be critical. They should always ask questions, and that's the thing that I have always struggled to understand. That people are so locked in with a meaning, with a belief in something, that logic becomes useless. Like, you can present them with arguments, even use the Bible itself and show them what Scripture says, when still they will deny what it is, what is written. But yeah, that's how it goes.
Not a divine one. You may be pure and noble, Uriah, but all too often a priest is a man who is cruel and purely seeking personal gain. Religion has no place in a fair and just society. In ages past, a frightening number of people took these holy books absolutely literally.
The Inquisition.
So untold misery and death because they truly believed the words they read. The history of religion is a horror story, Uriah. And if you doubt it, look to the past and see what humanity has done in the name of their gods over the millennia. In ancient times, ritual sacrifices were commonplace. To appease their vile gods, priests drowned women and children.
Is that the soundtrack
wells
of the Hulk
and cut
movie?
the heart out of their slaves
playing in
and
the background.
prisoners. They would drive a pile through a maiden's body to pacify a non-existent creature.
You cannot seriously compare my religion to such barbarism. You describe ignorant savagery, not religion as I would name it.
Can't I? It was never uncommon for religions founded in this region of the world to use their faith to justify conquest without mercy. The rich desired more power, but the peasantry would not fight for their kings and their lords just to further the interest of those who ruled them so cruelly. The lords knew this. They guised their political objectives with religious
bloody
significance
Solaire.
by a just and marvelous judgment of God, and the people fought fervently for
Do
a
not
cause
praise this
with
son.
no merit. Extremism bred extremism, and the retaliation was swift. Now that war had been initiated on religious pretexts, the conflicts escalated, and the battling continued, until little was left but fields littered with the bones of the foolish and the deceived.
Insane.
But sorrow or remorse was never tolerated for such a thing, as the crusade was God's will, after all.
Again,
This is ancient history.
was never so.
As you say, the nobles were bent on furthering their own interests. They used religion as an excuse, but in their greed they would have committed these atrocities one way or another. You cannot vouchsafe the truth of events so lost in the mists of time.
I would agree with you, had they not repeated the act nearly a century later. Warriors laid siege to the sect stronghold in ancient France, and when the city fell, the generals asked their leader how they might tell the faithful from the traitors among the captives.
Burn them all and let God
his God,
sort them out.
ordered the warriors to kill them all. God will know his own. 20,000 men, women, and children
Yikes.
were lost to faith that day. Of course, for fear that any may escape, an organization was given absolute power over the people, with its sole purpose to hunt down those who ran. They brought about hysteria and tortured any they so pleased. They did not stop once all their enemies were hunted down and killed either.
And the crazy thing is, I mean, one does not have to be a scientist or a man of high knowledge to know that these are not Christian values. It's as simple as that. It's in a way like when we nowadays see, I don't want to attack anybody personally, but we see like the Republican Party. I only say the Republican Party because they are the ones who have this very conservative view on what religion is supposed to be. And we obviously can observe in like the way that they demonstrate their faith, especially throughout the entirety of throughout COVID, that these people are clearly not of God. They barely know what it is that they're talking about. Coming on stage, speaking in tongues, like gesticulating everywhere, making like weird sounds and stuff like that. And you go like, how is it that people can attend these churches and think that they are getting closer to anything? Again, they make up thing as it goes and use the foundation of something that has once been great to their own profits. It's disgusting.
They too had convinced themselves of their holiness. They exterminated whole towns on the merest suspicion of witchcraft or treachery. When it was all said and done, near 100,000 were dead. Most of them were innocent.
If you'll allow me, I shall turn your logic back upon you, Apocalypsis. Had it been a secular government that decided they required more land and riches, do you truly believe they would have decided against it for no reason other than that there was no divine justification? Look back upon your great knowledge of history. Do you truly not recall any secular government that drove itself mad with suspicion of treachery and created a state ruled by surveillance and torture? You chop apart history, take what you so desire, and insist I behold the bloody remains. Humans are flawed, and religion is more often a convenient scapegoat than a corrupting force.
If you believe that, then you have been shut away in this church for far too long, priest. All the dictators deposed through unification were mass-murdering ethnarchs who killed millions in their constant warring, burning away all hope of progress. Cardinal Tang's pogroms and death camps saw millions dead in the Indonesia bloc. He died but 30 years ago and claimed his entire life had been served in the name of a greater power.
You fixate on the blood and death and forget all the good that can be achieved through faith.
Uriah, you only see religion for what it can be. I am seeing it for what it most always is. Savagery pervades our world, and it is sustained by ignorance and crude belief. It's true that before the descent of Old Night, religion had lost its power over the people. But like the worst kind of poison, it lingered and fostered division amongst those who endured. Without belief, divisions blur over generations. new generations mingle, intermarry, and forget ancient wounds. It is only belief in gods and divine entities that keep them alien to one another. And anything that divides people breeds inhumanity and cruelty. Religion is the canker in mankind's heart that serves such an ugly purpose.
I have heard all that you have had to say, friend Apocalypsis, and I have finally heard enough. Yes, people have done terrible things to one another in the name of their gods, but they have done terrible things regardless of the course of their beliefs. An acceptance of gods and an afterlife is a vital part of what makes us who we are. If you take that away from humanity, what do you suggest takes its place? In my many years as a priest, I have ministered to many dying people, and the emotional benefit of religion's power to console the wounded and the dying, as well as those left behind, cannot be underestimated.
There is a flaw in your logic, priest. Religion's power to console gives it no credence or validity. It might be a comfort to a dying man to believe that he will go to some bountiful paradise of endless joy. But even if he dies with a wonderful smile on his face, it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Better that less would die due to the removal of religion than each zealot die with a smile.
Maybe, but when my time comes, I will die with God's name on my lips.
Are you afraid to die, Uriah?
No.
Truly?
Truly. I have my share of sins, but I have spent the greater part of my life in the service of my God, and I believe I have served him faithfully.
So why is it that when you go to these people who are dying and clinging to their beliefs that they don't welcome the end of their life? Surely the gathered family and friends should be of good cheer and celebrate their relatives' passing. After all, if eternal paradise awaits us, why are they not filled with gleeful anticipation? Could it be that, in their heart of hearts, they don't really believe it?
Are you ever excited to have a loved one move on or leave in search of something greater? Are you ever excited to leave your family and friends in search of a better life? Even if it is for the best, are you delighted to leave all that you know to be thrust into the unknown? No one is. Life is a gift, and our chance to make ourselves into someone before our time in the afterlife. Who would give that up willingly? If you cannot see that plainly, then you are a fool.
Step, 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 step.
The Lord of mankind is the light in the way, and all his actions are for the benefit of mankind, which is his people. So it is taught in the holy words of our order, and above all
There
things,
is
that God
no
will
one to
protect-
hear you.
I don't care what you say anymore. You have come here to do what you feel you need to do, and I'll not buttress your ego and self-righteousness by playing along any longer. You listen to my words, but hear nothing. End the charade.
As you
That's good
wish.
on both sides.
No more games.
Surprise, bitch! It is I, Big E. Has always been you. He has always been.
You.
Now do you understand the futility of what you do here?
You are the Emperor.
I am.
Damn.
It is time to go, Uriah.
It is I in all my
Go where?
glorious
There is nowhere else for me in this godless world of yours.
Of course there is. Embrace the new way and be part of something incredible.
Embrace my knee, son. The healing. And now he realizes all of it was built upon a lie.
And it achieve its full potential. Humanity is the same. And only when the suffocating shadows of a religion that teaches us not to question is gone from this world will we see its true, radiating brilliance.
I will miss this place.
In time, I will build an imperium of such grandeur and magnificence that this will seem like a pauper's hovel. Now, let us be on our way.
Radiating with so much light and warmth. What's up, bro? I had to burn your home. The life's work gone.
How can you do this?
We're
You say
sorry.
you stand for reason and the advancement of understanding. But here you are destroying a repository of knowledge.
Some things are best forgotten.
I hope you have foreseen the consequences of a world bereft of religion.
I have. It is my dream.
And it does always put the fun thing into question. The Emperor have foreseen all of these events, and he does all this because he is certain, right? But that's the thing, the difference between what would make one trust in the Emperor or not. That the events is not prophetical, not one bit. The Emperor is going upon his certainty, and he was able to predict much of the events. Wouldn't he have told his sons to try to prevent those? That's kind of like the contrast where you see what ends up like. How can I explain this? Like, you see the Imperium turning more into like a religious sect, right? That's what it ends up going after the Emperor is mortally wounded and the Ecclesiarchy starts establishing the whole thing of sacrifices and then the Church of the Emperor. And then, if you were to put that in comparison to, let's say, Christianity, things operate in a simple system, prophecy, fulfillment. That's what happens. You should be able to see these things being fulfilled or not. These should be written beforehand. The Emperor, of course, does not operate after that, you know. He's not a religion. So, therefore, he never tells his plan to anybody. A stark contrast to what Christianity does, where God always announces the thing that he's going to do, and nevertheless they will transpire, whether or not it takes time. But the Emperor is like, oh, I have a great plan, but I won't tell you. I'll never tell. But okay.
An imperium of man that exists without recourse to gods and the supernatural. A united galaxy with terror at its heart.
A united galaxy?
Indeed. Soon enough, unity will be achieved on Terra.
Kind of
It
human
is time to reclaim humanity's lost empire.
What about
among
the
stars.
space aliens?
With you at its head, I presume.
Of course. Nothing of such grand scale can be achieved without a singular vision at its heart. Least of all, the reconquest of the galaxy. There is a place for you at my side, Uriah. You are noble and your heart is true. We have need of iterators who would spread my imperial truth across the stars to all those planets without guidance.
I can submit to no imperial truth. My entire life has been altered by, at best, a misunderstanding. At worst, my life has been spent following a lie. But you know what? It doesn't matter that my life has been one massive falsehood. I came here with my heart open and emptied by grief. The spirit of my god had entered my soul and filled me with love. My devotion was my salvation, and I have spread a doctrine of love and forgiveness. No amount of words and tricks may change that. Even now, despite this revelation, my heart is filled with love. There is no resentment in my heart.
That's so sad.
What makes faith so powerful, Emperor, is that it requires no proof. Belief is enough.
I feared such a thing. I wish you would join my great crusade, Uriah. Soon I shall expand my Imperium to the furthest corners of the galaxy, with all my sons beside me. I need men like you. You make a virtue of commitment and purity.
Did you not just speak to me of the horror of the Crusades? And what evil men do in the name of purity? You are no better than the holy men you were telling me about.
The difference is that I know I am right, Uriah.
Spoken like a true autocrat.
You misunderstand, Uriah. I have seen the narrow path that humanity must walk to survive. This is how we must begin.
It is a dangerous road you travel.
It's funny because all of this, it rings so close to Christianity, that having to walk through a narrow path. The only difference is that they are not, Christians are the ones who are meant to suffer and not be the ones who are to bring on the purge upon others. Well, to be fair though, the Imperium does suffer quite a bit. If that is the Emperor's plan, then I guess.
To deny humanity a thing will only make them crave it more. I see no reality in which your goals do not lead us to disaster and ruin. Beware your subjects do not begin to see you as a god. I truly hope, in the name of all that is divine, you are right. But I dread the future you forge.
I wish only the best for my people.
I believe you, Apocalypsis. But I cannot be a part of it.
Oof. Sorry, son. Oh, come on. You could at least let the clock tick. Emperor, what say you? Oh? A moment of silence. Oh, and so began the end. The Imperium's fall. And suddenly Horus heard her voice screaming to him, "Your father's wrong." Okay, that's way before that. But yeah, wonderful. It's a wonderful story. As I've mentioned, it's nice to have these fan animations. Like this is worth any. It's better than anything that Games Workshop has put out there. I know that there was this Ultramarine movie kind of thing, but I haven't managed to watch it yet. Perhaps I'll give it a try. It may be as good as this one, but I don't know. Well, second only to Hell's Reach. This one. Hell's Reach was also a long one, to be honest. But it was good. It was very good. But yeah, a wonderful story. The Last Church. I wonder if I wonder if Uriah is still alive, while he's like in the warp somewhere there, smiling at the Emperor, being like, "Hey, bro, I told you so." I don't know how the Emperor is doing the things that he does, but he has a plan, always. But guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. It has been a long one, and I hope that some of you stuck around throughout the entire thing. And if you did, congratulations for making it through all my rambling on religion. I hope that I didn't bore you too much. And yeah, but I kind of felt like this commentary was needed, besides just a simple reaction. And yeah, hopefully this was kind of insightful. You may disagree with all my points and you may agree, but that's the wonderful thing about it. Any thoughts that you may have about it, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you have any other recommendation, let me know as well. And have a wonderful day, and I see you guys next time. Bye.